Yongsoo walked through the automatic doors of the Whole Foods in Beverly Hills, California. His two bodyguards flanked him on either side. He did not need groceries. His personal chef handled all of that, but he liked to walk through expensive stores sometimes. It reminded him of how far he had come from the streets of Seoul, where he grew up with nothing. The store was quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. Soft music played from the ceiling speakers. The produce section was arranged like a work of art. Organic vegetables stacked in perfect pyramids, imported fruits glistening under the lights. Everything was clean and orderly. Yongsoo moved past the fresh flowers and headed toward the back of the store. He had no destination in mind. He was just killing time before his next meeting. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. Whatever it was could wait. Then he saw her. He stopped walking so suddenly that one of his bodyguards almost bumped into him. His chest tightened. His breath caught in his throat. For a moment, he thought he was seeing a ghost. A woman stood near the day-old bread section. Her clothes were thin and worn. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired. She looked hungry. She looked like she had not slept properly in weeks. But even like that, he would recognize her anywhere. Nancy. The woman who had disappeared from his life 5 years ago without a single word. The woman he had searched for across 3 states. The woman he had never stopped thinking about even when he tried to convince himself he had moved on. She was talking to a store employee. Her voice was too quiet for him to hear from this distance, but he could see the desperation in her body language, the way she kept glancing down at something beside her. That was when Yongsoo noticed the children. 2 of them, a boy and a girl. They looked about 4 years old. They were clinging to Nancy's worn jacket like they were afraid she might disappear. The little girl had her thumb in her mouth. The little boy was staring at the bread with wide, hungry eyes. Yongsoo felt his heart crack open. He watched as the store employee shook his head apologetically. Nancy's shoulders slumped. She nodded and tried to smile like it was no big deal, like she had not just been denied something basic, like her children were not standing there looking at food they could not have. Yongsoo took a step closer, then another. His bodyguards exchanged confused looks but followed him silently. He was close enough now to hear Nancy's voice. It was softer than he remembered, more tired, but still unmistakably hers. "Come on, Bobbies," she said to the twins. "Let's go see if there's samples at the other store." The little girl tugged on her jacket. "Mommy, I'm hungry." "I know, sweetheart, I know. We'll find something soon." Yongsoo felt tears burn behind his eyes. He had not cried in years. He was a man who controlled millions of dollars in underground operations across California. He had faced down rivals who wanted him dead. He had built an empire through blood and strategy and sheer willpower. And now he was standing in a grocery store, trying not to fall apart, because the woman he loved was begging for food samples with 2 children who had his exact eyes. His eyes. The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. Those children had his eyes, the same shape, the same dark color, the same intensity that he saw every time he looked in the mirror. They were his. He did not need a DNA test. He did not need confirmation. He knew it in his bones. Those were his children, his twins, his blood. And they were hungry. Nancy turned to leave and finally saw him. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, fear, shame, pain, and then something that looked almost like anger. She grabbed both children's hands and started walking quickly toward the exit. But the little girl tripped over her own feet and fell hard on the polished floor. She started crying. Nancy froze. She could not pick up her daughter and run at the same time. She was trapped. Yongsoo walked toward them slowly. He waved his bodyguards back without looking at them. He did not want to scare her. He did not want to scare the children. He just wanted to help. He knelt down next to the little girl. She was crying and holding her knee. There was no blood, but she was probably going to have a bruise. "Hey there," Yongsoo said softly. "That was a big fall. Are you okay?" The little girl looked up at him with watery eyes. His eyes. She sniffled and nodded. "You're very brave," he told her. "What's your name?" "Jenna," she whispered. "That's a beautiful name. I'm going to help you stand up now, okay, Jenna?" She nodded again. Yongsoo carefully helped her to her feet. The little boy had moved closer to Nancy and was watching him with suspicious eyes. "What's your name?" Yongsoo asked him. The boy did not answer. He just pressed closer to his mother. "His name is Milo," Jenna said helpfully. "He doesn't talk to strangers." "That's very smart of him." Yongsoo finally looked up at Nancy. She was staring at him with tears streaming down her face. She was shaking. Whether from fear or cold or exhaustion, he could not tell. "Nancy," he said. Her name felt strange on his tongue after 5 years. Strange but right, like coming home. "Yongsoo," her voice cracked on his name. "I can explain." "I don't need explanations right now," he said. He stood up slowly. "Right now, I need to feed these children. Will you let me do that?" Nancy's pride was written all over her face. She wanted to say no. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to pretend he had not just caught her at her lowest moment. But then Milo tugged on her jacket. "Mommy, I'm really hungry." Nancy's pride crumbled. She closed her eyes and nodded. Yongsoo turned to one of his bodyguards. "Get a cart, fill it with whatever they need, whatever they want, and then bring it to my car." The bodyguard nodded and disappeared. Yongsoo looked back at Nancy. "We need to talk, but not here, not like this. Will you come with me somewhere private?" Nancy hesitated. 5 years of distrust were warring with her desperation. Finally, she nodded again. Yongsoo placed his hand gently on the small of her back. The touch was familiar and foreign at the same time. He guided her and the twins toward the exit. Whatever had happened 5 years ago, whatever had made her run, whatever had brought her to this moment of begging for food in a Beverly Hills grocery store, he was going to find out. And whoever was responsible was going to pay. Why do you think Nancy disappeared 5 years ago without telling Yongsoo she was pregnant with his twins? Drop your theory in the comments below. And please do well to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. Now let's continue. Yongsoo's black Escalade pulled into the parking lot of a quiet cafe in Santa Monica. It was a place he owned but rarely visited. Private. Secure. No cameras except his own. The twins had fallen asleep in the backseat during the 20-minute drive. They were exhausted. Yongsoo could not stop looking at them in the rearview mirror. His children. His flesh and blood. 4 years old and he had missed everything. First steps, first words, first birthdays, all of it stolen from him. He parked the car but did not get out. Neither did Nancy. They sat in heavy silence for a long moment. "They're mine," he finally said. It was not a question. Nancy stared straight ahead through the windshield. "Yes." "Were you ever going to tell me?" "I tried." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I tried to find you after they were born, but by then I thought." She trailed off. Yongsoo waited. "I thought you had moved on," she finished. "I thought you were married." Yongsoo turned to look at her directly. "Married? Nancy, I spent 2 years looking for you. I hired private investigators. I called every hospital, every police station, every morgue. I thought you were dead." Nancy flinched at the word morgue. "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" He could hear the anger creeping into his voice and fought to control it. "You disappeared in the middle of the night. No note, no call, nothing. For 5 years, Nancy. 5 years. And now I find you begging for food with my children who don't even know who I am." "You think I wanted this?" Nancy's voice cracked. She finally turned to face him, and he could see years of pain written on her face. "You think this was my choice? Then tell me what happened. Because I have been living in hell for 5 years trying to understand why the woman I loved abandoned me." Nancy's tears started falling again. She wiped them away angrily like she was frustrated with her own weakness. "Someone came to me," she said. "About a week before I left, a man. He showed me photographs of you with another woman, a Korean woman. He said you were engaged to her, that the marriage had been arranged since you were teenagers. He said I was just a distraction, a plaything while you were in America." Yongsoo felt his blood run cold. "That's a lie. I was never engaged to anyone." "I know that now, but back then," Nancy shook her head. "He had photographs, Yongsoo. They looked real. You were at a restaurant with her. You were holding her hand. You were looking at her the way you used to look at me." "Those photos were fake. They had to be. I never. He also had documents, Nancy continued. Wedding invitations with your name on them, announcements from Korean newspapers. It all looked so real. Young-soo was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to destroy his relationship with Nancy. Someone with access and resources. There's more, Nancy said. He didn't just show me the evidence, he threatened me. What do you mean? He said if I didn't leave quietly, something would happen to my family. My mother was still alive back then. She was sick. He knew things about her that he shouldn't have known. Her hospital, her room number, her medication schedule. Nancy's voice was shaking now. He said if I ever tried to contact you or tell you about the pregnancy, he would make sure my mother never woke up from her next surgery. Young-soo felt rage building in his chest like a furnace. Someone had threatened the mother of his children. Someone had forced her to run. Someone had stolen his family from him. Who was he? Young-soo demanded. Did he give you a name? No, he just said he worked for your family, that he was protecting your interests. Nancy looked down at her hands. I was 22 years old. I was pregnant and terrified. My mother was dying. I didn't know what else to do, so I ran. Why didn't you come back after your mother passed? I tried. A year after she died, I finally worked up the courage to look for you. But by then, there were articles online about you, new rumors about your engagement, pictures of you at events with different women. I thought you really had moved on. I thought you didn't want me. Young-soo reached over and took her hand. She flinched at first but did not pull away. I never moved on, he said quietly. Those events were business. Those women meant nothing. I was going through the motions because I had to. But every night I thought about you, every single night for 5 years. Nancy started sobbing, deep, painful sobs that shook her whole body. Young-soo wanted to hold her, but he was not sure she would let him, so he just held her hand and let her cry. When she finally calmed down, he asked the question that had been burning in his mind. How did you end up like this? Homeless? Hungry? Why didn't you reach out to anyone for help? Nancy laughed bitterly. Pride, stupidity, I don't know. I had a job for a while. I was working as a home health aide in San Diego. It wasn't great money, but it was enough. Then the company I worked for went out of business. I couldn't find another job fast enough. I fell behind on rent. We got evicted 3 months ago. 3 months, Young-soo's voice was sharp. You've been on the streets with my children for 3 months. We stayed at shelters mostly. The one in Pasadena is actually pretty decent, but they only let you stay for 30 days at a time. We've been bouncing around. Young-soo could not listen to any more. His children had been sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, begging for food samples at grocery stores, while he lived in a mansion with more bedrooms than he could count. This ends now, he said firmly. You're coming home with me, all 3 of you. Young-soo, I can't just. This is not negotiable, Nancy. I understand you have questions. I understand you don't trust me yet. But my children are not spending another night in a shelter. We'll figure out the rest later. But tonight, you sleep under my roof. Nancy looked back at the sleeping twins. Jenna had her head on Milo's shoulder. They looked peaceful for the first time since he had seen them. Okay, she whispered. Just for tonight. Young-soo knew it would not be just for tonight, but he did not push. He had waited 5 years. He could be patient a little longer. Young-soo's estate in Atherton, California, was one of the most expensive properties in the entire country. The town itself was known as a haven for tech billionaires and old money families. His house sat on 3 acres of manicured grounds with a pool, a tennis court, and a guest house larger than most regular homes. When the Escalade pulled through the iron gates, Nancy's jaw dropped. This is where you live. This is where we live now, Young-soo corrected her gently. The twins had woken up during the last few minutes of the drive. They were pressed against the windows, staring at everything with wide eyes. Mommy, is this a castle? Milo asked. It does look like a castle, Nancy admitted. Are there dragons? Jenna asked excitedly. Young-soo laughed. It was the first time he had laughed genuinely in months. No dragons, but I do have a dog. His name is Bruno. He's very friendly. A dog? Jenna was practically vibrating with excitement. Can I pet him? You can pet him as much as you want. The The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Yongsoo's household staff was already lined up to greet them. He had called ahead to prepare rooms and food. The twins climbed out of the car and stared at everything. The fountain in the circular driveway, the massive oak doors, the perfectly trimmed hedges shaped like animals. A large golden retriever came bounding around the corner of the house. Jenna squealed with delight and ran toward him. Bruno was well-trained and gentle. He immediately flopped onto his back to let Jenna rub his belly. Milo was more cautious. He stayed close to Nancy, holding her hand tightly. He was watching Yongsoo with those suspicious eyes again. "Hey, Milo," Yongsoo said, kneeling down to his level. "I know this is all very new and strange. You don't have to trust me right away. But I promise you I'm going to take good care of you and your mom and your sister. Okay." Milo considered this for a moment. "Do you have dinosaurs?" "No real dinosaurs, but I think I might have some dinosaur books in the library. Want me to show you later?" Milo nodded slowly. It was not trust yet, but it was a start. The housekeeper, a kind woman named Rosa who had worked for Yongsoo for years, showed Nancy and the twins to their rooms. There was a large suite for Nancy with a connected room for the children. Everything was clean and comfortable, and probably cost more than Nancy had earned in her entire life. Yongsoo gave them time to settle in while he made some phone calls. His first call was to Vincent, his most trusted advisor and friend. Vincent had been with him since the early days. He was loyal, smart, and ruthless when necessary. "I need you to investigate something," Yongsoo said. 5 years ago, someone approached a woman named Nancy Chen. They showed her fake evidence that I was engaged to someone else. They threatened her family. They made her disappear. Vincent was quiet for a moment. "This is the Nancy, the one you searched for." "Yes, she's here now, with my children." "Children?" "Twins, 4 years old. I'll explain everything later. Right now, I need you to find out who was behind this. Someone in my organization had access to create fake documents and photos. Someone knew enough about her life to threaten her mother." "That narrows it down significantly," Vincent said. 5 years ago, only a handful of people had that level of access. I'll start digging immediately. Be discreet. I don't want to tip anyone off." "Understood. I'll have preliminary information within 48 hours. Yongsoo hung up and stared out the window of his office. The sun was setting over the Silicon Valley hills. Somewhere in this beautiful landscape was a traitor. Someone who had stolen 5 years from him. Someone who had made the mother of his children suffer. He would find them, and when he did, they would regret ever being born. That night, Yongsoo ate dinner with Nancy and the twins in the main dining room. The children were overwhelmed by the amount of food. Milo ate 3 helpings of pasta. Jenna could not stop talking about Bruno, who was lying under the table waiting for dropped scraps. Nancy was quieter. She picked at her food and kept looking around like she expected to wake up from a dream at any moment. After dinner, Yongsoo helped put the twins to bed. It felt strange and wonderful at the same time. Jenna insisted on a bedtime story. Yongsoo found a book about a princess and a dragon and read it to them while they snuggled under their new blankets. By the end of the story, both children were asleep. Yongsoo stood in the doorway for a long time just watching them breathe. These were his children, his legacy, his future, and they had no idea who he really was. He found Nancy on the balcony outside her room. She was staring at the stars. "They're beautiful," he said, coming to stand beside her. "The stars. The children." Nancy smiled sadly. "They look like you. Everyone always said so. I couldn't deny who their father was even if I wanted to." "Tell me about them. Tell me everything I missed." So she did. She told him about the pregnancy, about the difficult labor, about bringing them home from the hospital alone, about Milo's first word, which was book, about Jenna's first steps, which she took at 9 months old while chasing a butterfly. She told him about sleepless nights and first days of preschool and birthday parties in tiny apartments. She told him about Milo's love of dinosaurs and Jenna's obsession with anything pink. She told him about the time they both had the flu, and she thought she was going to lose her mind from exhaustion. Yongsoo listened to every word. He felt joy and pain in equal measure, joy at learning about his children, pain at knowing he had missed it all. When Nancy finally stopped talking, there were tears on both their faces. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I believed the lies. I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I kept them from you." "You did what you thought was right," Young-soo said. "You were protecting yourself and your mother. I don't blame you for that. I blame whoever did this to us." He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "I'm going to find them, Nancy. I'm going to find out who destroyed our lives, and I'm going to make sure they can never hurt us again." Nancy nodded. She believed him. For the first time in 5 years, she actually believed that things might get better. 3 days passed. The twins were adjusting to their new life faster than anyone expected. Milo had discovered the library and spent hours looking at dinosaur books. Jenna had become Bruno's shadow, following the dog everywhere around the property. Nancy was struggling more. She felt out of place in the massive house. She did not know how to interact with the staff. She kept apologizing for everything, even things that did not require apologies. Young-soo tried to give her space while still being present. He took the twins to the park. He taught Milo how to play chess. He let Jenna paint his nails bright pink because she asked nicely. He was falling in love with his children more every day. On the 4th day, Vincent arrived with his preliminary report. They met in Young-soo's private office. The room was soundproof and swept for bugs twice daily. Whatever was discussed here stayed here. "I traced the fake photographs," Vincent began. "They were created using software that was cutting-edge 5 years ago, very expensive. The source files were deleted, but I found metadata that points to a specific computer." "Which computer?" "One that was located in your San Francisco headquarters at the time, in the office that belonged to your cousin." Young-soo felt his jaw tighten. "Dominic." "It gets worse. The threatening messages sent to Nancy's phone came from a burner, like we expected. But the burner was purchased at a convenience store 3 blocks from the San Francisco office. I pulled security footage from nearby businesses. The quality is terrible, but look at this." Vincent handed over a grainy photograph. A man in a baseball cap buying something at a counter. The face was obscured, but the build was familiar. The way he stood was familiar. "That could be anyone," Young-soo said. "It could be, but watch the way he moves. The slight limp in his left leg from that motorcycle accident in 2015. Young-soo looked closer. Dominic had been in a motorcycle accident that left him with a permanent limp. The man in the photo definitely favored his left leg. "This isn't enough for proof," Young-soo said, "but it's enough for suspicion. There's one more thing. I looked into Nancy's mother's hospital records from around that time. Someone called the hospital 2 days before Nancy disappeared, asking about her mother's condition. They claimed to be family, but Mrs. Chen didn't have any other family. When I checked the phone number, it was another burner, purchased at the same convenience store." The evidence was circumstantial. It would not hold up in any legitimate court, but Young-soo did not operate in legitimate courts. "Where is Dominic now?" "Scottsdale, Arizona. He's been running operations there for the past 3 years. He asked for the transfer himself, said he wanted a change of scenery." "Or he wanted to get away from the scene of his crime," Young-soo muttered. "Keep digging. I want something concrete before I move on him, and don't let him know he's being investigated." Vincent nodded and left. Young-soo sat alone in his office for a long time. Dominic was family, his mother's sister's son. They had grown up together in Seoul before Young-soo's father relocated the family to America. They had played together as children, built this empire together as young men. And now it seemed Dominic had betrayed him in the worst possible way. But why? Young-soo had always treated Dominic fairly, given him territory, given him respect, given him opportunities that others would have killed for. The answer came to him slowly, rising from old memories he had buried. Dominic had always wanted more. He had always believed he should be the one in charge. When Young-soo's father named Young-soo as his successor instead of Dominic, there had been tension, arguments, resentment that never fully went away. Dominic had smiled and accepted his role publicly, but privately, he must have been nursing a grudge for years. And when he saw Young-soo happy with Nancy, in love in a way that made him vulnerable, he saw an opportunity. Not to take over the organization, but to take something personal. To hurt Yongsoo where it mattered most. Yongsoo closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Rage was coursing through his veins, but he could not let it control him. He needed to be smart about this. He needed to be patient. Dominic had waited 5 years to enjoy his victory. Yongsoo could wait a little longer to claim his revenge. That night, he found Nancy in the kitchen making hot chocolate for the twins. She looked more relaxed than he had seen her since the grocery store. There was even a hint of color in her cheeks. "They wanted a midnight snack," she explained. "I hope that's okay." "Everything in this house is yours," Yongsoo reminded her. "You never have to ask permission." Nancy nodded, still not fully comfortable with the concept. She poured the hot chocolate into 2 small mugs decorated with cartoon characters. Yongsoo had his staff buy everything child-related they could find. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Anything." "Why didn't you ever get married? 5 years is a long time. You could have found someone else." Yongsoo leaned against the counter. "I tried dating a few times. It never felt right. Everyone I met, I compared them to you, and they always came up short." That's a lot of pressure. What if I'm not the person you remember? What if I'm different now?" "You are different. So am I. We've both been through things that changed us." He moved closer to her. "But when I look at you, I still see the woman I fell in love with in San Francisco. The woman who laughed at my terrible jokes. The woman who cried at sad movies. The woman who once ate an entire pizza by herself and then pretended she didn't." Nancy laughed. It was the first real laugh he had heard from her. "You promised you would never bring that up again." "I lied. I'm a terrible person." She was smiling now, actually smiling, and for a moment it felt like no time had passed at all. Milo appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, is the hot chocolate ready?" "Almost, baby. Go back to the couch with your sister." Milo looked at Yongsoo. "Are you having hot chocolate too?" Yongsoo glanced at Nancy. She nodded slightly. "I would love some hot chocolate," he said. The 4 of them sat on the enormous couch in the family room, drinking hot chocolate and watching cartoon movies until the twins fell asleep again. Nancy carried Jenna back to bed, while Yongsoo carried Milo. When they met in the hallway afterward, there was a moment where they just looked at each other. Years of pain and separation and longing hung between them. "Thank you," Nancy whispered, "for not giving up on them, for not giving up on me." Yongsoo wanted to kiss her. He wanted to hold her and never let go. But he could see that she was not ready yet. She still had walls up, walls that would take time to break down. "I could never give up on you," he said simply. "Good night, Nancy." "Good night, Yongsoo." He watched her disappear into her room. Then he went to his own room on the other side of the house. Sleep did not come easily. His mind was racing with plans for Dominic, with memories of the past, with hopes for the future. But underneath, all of it was something he had not felt in 5 years. Peace. 2 weeks later, Yongsoo received an invitation to the annual gathering of connected families in Bellevue, Washington. It was an event he could not miss. Old alliances needed to be maintained. New deals needed to be discussed. Faces needed to be seen. He decided to bring Nancy and the twins. It was a calculated move. By presenting them publicly as his family, he was sending a message to everyone. "These people are under my protection. Touch them and die." Nancy was nervous about the idea. "I don't know how to act at these things. I'm nobody." "You are the mother of my children," Yongsoo said firmly. "That makes you somebody. That makes you untouchable. They need to see that. And the twins, you want to bring them to a gathering of people like you. There will be other children there. Families bring their kids all the time. It's surprisingly normal, I promise." Nancy was not convinced, but she agreed. The flight to Bellevue was on Yongsoo's private jet. The twins had never been on any airplane before, let alone a private one. They spent the entire flight running up and down the aisle and pressing their faces against the windows. The gathering was held at a massive estate overlooking Lake Washington. Security was everywhere, though they tried to blend in with the guests. Music played softly. Expensive champagne flowed freely. Men and women in designer clothes mingled and laughed and made deals worth millions. Yongsoo kept Nancy close to his side. He introduced her as his partner, which raised eyebrows among those who knew his history as a perpetual bachelor. The twins were charming and well-behaved, which impressed more than a few people. Everything was going smoothly until Dominic arrived. Yongsoo saw him across the room. Dominic had put on weight since their last meeting. His suit was expensive but slightly too tight. He was laughing with a group of associates, but his eyes were scanning the crowd. When those eyes landed on Nancy, they widened almost imperceptibly, just for a split second. Then his face smoothed back into its usual confident expression. Yongsoo felt rage coil in his stomach. He forced himself to stay calm. Dominic made his way across the room. His walk was casual, but Yongsoo could see the tension in his shoulders. "Cousin," Dominic said with a broad smile, "it's been too long." He pulled Yongsoo into a hug that lasted a beat too long. "Dominic, how are things in Scottsdale?" "Hot, profitable, the usual." Dominic's eyes slid to Nancy. "And who is this beautiful woman?" "This is Nancy, the mother of my children." Dominic's smile flickered. "Children? I didn't know you had children." "We were separated for a while. It's a long story, but we're together now." "How wonderful." Dominic turned to Nancy and took her hand. "It's lovely to meet you. I'm Dominic, Yongsoo's cousin." Nancy's face had gone pale. She was staring at Dominic with an expression Yongsoo recognized. Recognition. Fear. Realization. "The pleasure is mine," she managed to say. The twins ran over, having escaped from the children's area briefly. Jenna grabbed Nancy's leg, while Milo stood slightly behind her. Dominic looked at them with something that might have been surprise, or might have been calculation. "They look just like you, cousin," he said to Yongsoo. "The eyes especially." "They're beautiful, aren't they?" "Beautiful," Dominic smiled at the twins. "Hello there, little ones, are you having fun?" Neither child responded. Milo actually stepped further behind his mother. Children often had good instincts about people. An associate called for Dominic across the room. He excused himself with promises to catch up later. The moment he was gone, Nancy gripped Yongsoo's arm. "That was him," she whispered urgently. "His voice. I recognize his voice. He's the one who came to me 5 years ago. He's the one who threatened my mother." Yongsoo's entire body went rigid. "Are you certain?" "I'm certain. I've heard that voice in my nightmares for 5 years. I would never forget it." Yongsoo looked across the room at Dominic, who was laughing at something someone had said. He looked so normal, so harmless, so unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. "Not here," Yongsoo said quietly. "We can't do anything here, but I believe you, and I will handle this. I promise." Nancy nodded. She was shaking slightly. Yongsoo put his arm around her protectively. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Yongsoo made the necessary appearances and had the necessary conversations, but his mind was elsewhere, planning, calculating, preparing. Dominic had made his move 5 years ago. Now it was Yongsoo's turn. Back in Atherton, Yongsoo put his plan into motion. He and Vincent created a fake business opportunity, a lucrative development deal in San Jose that required Dominic's specific expertise. The kind of deal that was too good to pass up. The kind of deal that would require Dominic to come to California personally. While they waited for Dominic to take the bait, life continued. The twins started preschool at an elite academy in Palo Alto. The first day was emotional for everyone. Jenna cried when Nancy tried to leave. Milo marched in with his dinosaur backpack like he owned the place. By the end of the first week, they had both made friends and were thriving. Nancy began working on something she had put off for years. She enrolled in an online program to finish her nursing degree. The dream had never died, just been buried under survival. Now she had the time and resources to pursue it again. Yongsoo supported her completely. He hired a tutor to help with the difficult subjects. He made sure she had quiet time to study. He told her repeatedly that he wanted her to be successful in her own right, not dependent on him for everything. "I want us to be partners," he explained one evening. "Equal partners. You're not my charity case. You're not my kept woman. You're the mother of my children and you're going to be my wife someday, but only if you want to be." Nancy looked up from her textbook. You want to marry me? I've wanted to marry you since the first month we dated. I was going to propose the week after you disappeared. I had the ring and everything. What happened to the ring? It's in my safe. I could never bring myself to get rid of it. Nancy blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. That's either incredibly romantic or incredibly sad. Maybe both. They were sitting closer together than usual. The air between them was charged with something that had been building for weeks. Attraction, longing, love that had never really died despite everything. Nancy reached over and touched his face. Her fingers traced his jaw, his cheekbones, the corner of his mouth. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared to trust again. I'm scared to let myself love you again. What if something goes wrong? What if someone tries to separate us again? No one will ever separate us again, Young-soo promised. I will burn down anyone who tries. That's not a normal thing to say. I'm not a normal man. Nancy laughed despite herself. Then, slowly, carefully, she leaned in and kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, testing, but 5 years of separation and longing quickly overwhelmed caution. The kiss deepened. Young-soo pulled her closer. She melted into him like she had never left. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing heavily. Wow, Nancy said. Yeah, Young-soo agreed. Wow. I think I'm ready, she said. I think I'm ready to try again, for real this time. Young-soo smiled. It was a real smile, unguarded and full of joy. Then let's do this, together, no more running. No more running, Nancy agreed. The next morning, Dominic called to accept the fake business deal. He would be arriving in San Jose in 3 days. The trap was set. Young-soo's private club in San Jose was the perfect location for what was about to happen. He owned the entire building. The staff were all loyal to him. Every room was wired with hidden cameras and microphones. Dominic arrived right on time. He looked confident, relaxed. He had no idea he was walking into his own destruction. Cousin, Dominic spread his arms wide as he entered the private meeting room. It's good to see you again so soon. This deal sounds incredible. It is, Young-soo said. Please. Sit down. We have a lot to discuss. They sat across from each other at a polished oak table. Vincent was positioned outside the room, monitoring everything through the hidden cameras. For the first 20 minutes, they actually discussed business. Numbers, projections, potential profits. Dominic was engaged and enthusiastic. He genuinely believed this was a real opportunity. Then Young-soo changed the subject. I've been thinking a lot about the past lately, he said casually. About how things used to be, about all the things that went wrong. Dominic's smile faltered slightly. The past. 5 years ago, I lost someone important to me. Nancy. You met her at the Bellevue gathering. The pretty one with the twins. Yes, I remember. She disappeared without warning. I spent years trying to find her. I nearly destroyed myself looking for answers. Dominic shifted in his seat. That must have been difficult. It was, but recently I discovered something interesting. I discovered that she didn't leave voluntarily. Someone made her leave. Someone showed her fake evidence that I was engaged to another woman. Someone threatened her mother's life. The room was very quiet. That's terrible, Dominic said. His voice was slightly higher than normal. Who would do such a thing? That's what I wondered, so I investigated. I traced phone records. I pulled security footage. I followed a trail that led back 5 years to our old San Francisco office. Dominic's face was getting pale. I don't understand what this has to do with our business deal. There was no business deal, Dominic. Young-soo's voice was cold now, all pretense of friendliness gone. I brought you here because I know what you did. What I did? I haven't done anything. You went to Nancy. You showed her fake photographs of me with another woman. You threatened to kill her mother if she didn't disappear. You stole 5 years of my life because of some petty jealousy that you've been nursing since we were teenagers. Dominic stood up abruptly. This is insane. You have no proof of any of this. I have phone records from the burner you used. I have security footage of you buying that burner. I have the computer forensics showing the fake photographs were created on your work computer. And most importantly, I have Nancy's eyewitness testimony. She recognized your voice at the gathering, the same voice that threatened to kill her mother in a hospital room. Dominic's confident facade finally cracked, his face contorted with rage and fear and something that looked almost like relief, the relief of not having to hide anymore. You want the truth, Dominic spat. Fine, yes, I did it. I orchestrated the whole thing. Why? Because you had everything. Dominic's voice was rising now. The leadership, the respect, the future. Your father chose you over me even though I worked twice as hard, even though I was smarter and more ruthless, even though I deserved it more. So you destroyed my relationship. That was your revenge. I wanted you to feel what I felt, empty, alone, like nothing you did would ever be enough. Dominic laughed bitterly. I didn't expect her to actually stay gone. I thought she would leave for a few months, you would get over her, and I would have my satisfaction. But she vanished completely. And you spent years drowning in grief. It was perfect, better than I ever imagined. Yongsu was very still. His hands were flat on the table. His expression was unreadable. You made the mother of my children beg for food on the streets, he said quietly. You made my children sleep in shelters. You stole 4 years of their lives from me. I didn't know about the children. That was just a bonus. Something dangerous flickered in Yongsu's eyes. For a moment, Dominic looked genuinely afraid. What are you going to do? Dominic asked. Kill me, we're family. You stopped being family the moment you threatened the woman I love. Yongsu pressed a button on the table. But no, I'm not going to kill you. That would be too quick, too merciful. The door opened. Vincent entered with 2 other men. Vincent has a recording of everything you just said, Yongsu continued. That recording is going to be sent to every family we do business with. They will know what you did. They will know you are a traitor who attacks family members. No one will work with you. No one will protect you. Every territory you control will be stripped away. Every connection you have will be severed. Dominic's face went white. You can't do this. I have allies, I have. You have nothing. As of this moment, you are exiled. You are blacklisted from every territory between Seattle and San Diego. If you ever come near me or my family again, the mercy I'm showing you today will disappear. Vincent and the men moved forward. Dominic tried to fight, but he was outnumbered. They dragged him toward the door. This isn't over, Dominic shouted. You think you've won, but I'll find a way back. The door closed behind him. Silence fell over the room. Yongsu sat alone for a long time, staring at the wall. He did not feel triumphant. He did not feel satisfied. He felt empty and tired and ready for all of this to be over. When he finally drove home to Atherton, Nancy was waiting for him on the front steps. She must have seen something in his face because she immediately came to him and wrapped her arms around him. It's done, he said into her hair. He's gone. Are you okay? I don't know. I thought I would feel better, but he's still my cousin. We grew up together. He hurt us. He hurt our children. You did what you had to do. Yongsu pulled back to look at her. How do you do that? Do what? Make everything seem clearer, simpler, better. Nancy smiled. I've had 5 years of practice looking at the bright side of terrible situations. It's a survival skill. I love you, Yongsu said. The words came out before he could stop them. I've loved you for 6 years, through everything, I never stopped. Nancy's eyes filled with tears. I love you too, I never stopped either. Even when I thought I hated you, even when I thought you betrayed me, some part of me always knew it couldn't be true. They stood there in the fatting sunlight, holding each other. Behind them, through the open front door, they could hear Milo and Jenna arguing about whose turn it was to play with Bruno. Their family, their future, finally within reach. The weeks following Dominic's exile were quiet, almost anticlimactically normal. Word spread quickly through the connected families about what had happened. There was sympathy for Yongsu and condemnation for Dominic. Several people reached out with similar stories, rivals who had been targeted by Dominic's schemes over the years. It turned out his betrayal of Yongsu was not an isolated incident. Dominic himself seemed to have disappeared. Last reports placed him somewhere in Europe, trying to establish connections with organizations who did not know his history. It would not last. The world was smaller than people thought. Eventually, his reputation would catch up with him. Yong-soo focused on what mattered, his family. He took Nancy and the twins to Disneyland for a weekend. It was the first real vacation any of them had ever taken together. The twins were overwhelmed with joy. Milo screamed on his first roller coaster. Jenna met a princess character and cried happy tears. Nancy laughed so hard at one point that she snorted, which made everyone laugh even harder. That night, in their hotel room after the kids were asleep, Nancy climbed into bed next to Yong-soo. "Today was perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." "It was just the beginning," Yong-soo promised. "We're going to have thousands of perfect days." She curled into him, her head on his chest. He stroked her hair and listened to her breathing slow as she drifted toward sleep. In that moment, everything that had happened felt worth it. The pain, the separation, the years of loneliness and searching. It had all led here, to this bed, to this woman, to this life. Nancy was healing too. She started seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of the past 5 years. The homelessness, the constant fear, the belief that she had been abandoned by the man she loved. It was not easy work, but she was committed to it. She was also excelling in her nursing program. Her grades were near the top of her class. She had found a passion she thought was dead and brought it back to life. The twins were thriving in school. Milo had become the unofficial paleontologist of his preschool, educating everyone about dinosaurs whether they wanted to learn or not. Jenna had developed a close friendship with a girl named Sophie, and they were inseparable. Yong-soo began restructuring his business, not exiting entirely, but shifting toward more legitimate operations, real estate, tech investments, things that could be passed down to his children without shame. One evening, he found Milo in the library, struggling with a picture book about planets. "Need help?" Yong-soo asked. Milo looked up. "These words are hard." "Let's read them together." They sat side by side, Yong-soo sounding out words and Milo repeating them. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the names of distant worlds that felt closer somehow because they were learning them together. When they finished the book, Milo looked at Yong-soo seriously. "Are you really my dad?" "I really am." "How come you weren't there before?" Yong-soo took a breath. "Some bad people kept me away from you and your mom. They lied to us and made it so we couldn't find each other, but I found you now, and I'm never going anywhere again." Milo considered this. "Promise." "I promise, cross my heart." "Okay," Milo hugged him suddenly fiercely. "I'm glad you found us." Yong-soo held his son and felt something crack open in his chest. Something he had kept locked away for years. The grief of everything he had missed. The joy of everything he had found. "I'm glad too, buddy," he managed to say. So glad." 1 year had passed since the day in the grocery store. So much had changed. Nancy had completed her nursing degree and was working part-time at a children's hospital in San Jose. She loved it. She came home every day with stories about the kids she had helped. Yong-soo had formalized his transition to legitimate business. He still had connections to his old world, still commanded respect in circles that operated outside the law. But his daily life was now consumed with property development, startup investments, and something new. A foundation to help homeless families get back on their feet. It was Nancy's idea. She wanted to make sure no one else went through what she had experienced. The twins were 5 now, about to start kindergarten in the fall. Milo's love of dinosaurs had expanded to include all science. Jenna had discovered gymnastics and was already doing cartwheels everywhere she went. They were happy, healthy, loved. On a warm Saturday evening, Yong-soo told Nancy he was taking her to dinner. Just the two of them. Rosa would watch the twins. He drove her to San Francisco, to a small Italian restaurant overlooking the bay, the same restaurant where they had their first date 6 years ago. Nancy recognized it immediately. "Oh my God, this place is still here." "It is. I may have bought it a few years ago just to make sure it never closed." She stared at him. "You bought a restaurant because we had our first date here." "I told you, I'm not a normal man." They ate pasta and drank wine and talked about everything and nothing. The years apart. The years together. the future stretching out before them like an open road. After dinner, Young-soo walked Nancy along the waterfront. The city lights sparkled on the dark water. The Golden Gate Bridge glowed red in the distance. He stopped at a specific spot, a bench overlooking the bay. The same bench where he had planned to propose 5 years ago, before everything went wrong. "This is where it was supposed to happen," he said. "The night you disappeared, I was going to bring you here after dinner. I had this whole speech planned." Nancy's eyes were shining. "What were you going to say?" Young-soo took both her hands in his. "I was going to say that before I met you, I thought love was a weakness, something that made people vulnerable, something to be avoided." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But then you came along, and you showed me that love wasn't weakness, it was strength. You made me want to be better, kinder, more human." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The same ring he had bought 6 years ago, still perfect, still waiting. Nancy's hands flew to her mouth. "I was going to say," Young-soo continued, "that I couldn't imagine spending my life with anyone else, that I wanted to build a home with you, a family with you, a future with you." He opened the box. Inside was a beautiful diamond ring, elegant and timeless. "I'm saying it now, 5 years late." He got down on one knee. "Nancy Chen, will you marry me?" Nancy was crying openly now, happy tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, yes." Young-soo slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. He stood and kissed her, a kiss that held 5 years of longing and a lifetime of promise. The wedding was held 3 months later at a vineyard in Napa Valley. It was small and intimate. Only people who truly mattered were invited. Milo was the ring bearer. He walked down the aisle with such seriousness that everyone laughed. Jenna was the flower girl. She threw petals with wild enthusiasm, covering everyone in the front row. Nancy's mother had passed away years ago, but her aunt walked her down the aisle. Nancy wore a simple white dress that made her look like a dream. Young-soo waited at the altar, watching her approach. Vincent stood beside him as best man. "You okay?" Vincent whispered. "I've never been better in my entire life," Young-soo said. The ceremony was short and sweet. They wrote their own vows. Young-soo talked about second chances and never giving up. Nancy talked about trust and healing and coming home. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the twins cheered loudest of all. The reception was full of music and laughter and dancing. Young-soo danced with Jenna standing on his feet. Nancy taught Milo the chicken dance. At one point, Bruno somehow got into the venue and ran around stealing food from tables. It was chaotic and imperfect, and absolutely wonderful. Late that night, after everyone had gone home and the twins were asleep in the guest house, Young-soo and Nancy stood on the balcony of their suite. "Mrs. Kim," Young-soo said, testing out her new name. "Mr. Kim," Nancy replied with a smile. "How does it feel?" "Like I finally know where I belong." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Like I'm finally home." 6 months later, the family moved into a new house in Saratoga. It was smaller than the Atherton estate, more suited for a family. A big backyard for the kids to play in, a room for Bruno, an office for Young-soo, a study space for Nancy. On their first morning in the new house, they gathered in the kitchen for breakfast. Jenna and Milo were arguing over the last pancake. Bruno was begging for scraps. Nancy was trying to mediate while laughing at the absurdity of it all. Young-soo stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching them. This was what he had been searching for, not power or wealth or respect, just this, a family, a home, a place to belong. Nancy caught his eye across the chaos. She smiled and mouthed, "I love you." Young-soo smiled back and mouthed it in return. Outside, the California sun was rising over the hills. Inside, the Kim family was having breakfast together. And everything was exactly as it should be.